Many of you have responded to the challenge assignments associated with this MOOC to give some concrete examples of how the Open Badges ecosystem plays out. We thought you'd like to hear from a few of our participants about the projects that they're working on that give examples of the Open Badges ecosystem in action. The first participant we'd like to hear a little bit from is Elizabeth Dalton, who is from Granite State College. Elizabeth?
Thanks. So I do have one slide, and then with your indulgence, I might actually grab the whiteboard and paste a couple of things up, but do I need to go forward to? Okay. I don't know how well you can see this. The challenge that I set for myself was to try to think about an area that I think is less well considered in terms of badges. So we very often hear about badges for skills that are easy to measure objectively, or technical skills, sometimes foreign language skills, because there are some very well established competencies and standards for those. But I'm concerned about what I'm hearing in the media and in a lot of public discourse about liberal arts education and people wanting to kind of shift more towards very specific job skills. And I think there really is a lot of value in the liberal arts education the way it's framed now, but it's not always easy for people to articulate or to measure what's going on there. So I thought, well, what if we had a series of badges that could be used to represent the things that we think people get out of a solid liberal arts core curriculum, which is usually in the general education courses at the beginning, and then some of the more advanced courses in some of the humanities. So one of the earliest challenges was to try to find some kind of standards or standards organization to base some of this work on, and that was tough. But I did eventually find, and that's what I'm kind of looking at here, the the Association of American Colleges and Universities has a set of what they call value rubrics, and that's an acronym that stands for something I'm not going to try to go to. And there's check aacu.org. You can download these things. You have to just fill out a little survey that says why you're interested in having this document. But there are a set of about a dozen of these different categories. So this one is global learning, which I thought was one of the more interesting ones. But there's one for critical thinking, there's one for creative thinking, there's one for oral communication, written communication, all the things that we think somebody gets out of a well-rounded college education. So this particular one is a good example. It provides, let's see if I can, yeah. So there are, can you guys see the pointer that I'm pointing at now, that I'm waving around on the page? Does that show, or do I have to hold the button down?
Yeah, you have to click it.
Okay. So in this particular value rubric, this is global learning, and it's the kind of integrated knowledge and perspective, taking into account the connections between us and the people and places around us. So global self-awareness is one of the categories, then perspective taking, cultural diversity, and so on. So there happen to be 6 sub-rubrics in this particular example. And then for each of these, they've defined a basic benchmark level, which is sort of, I think, where they expect people to come in, 2 milestones along the way, and then a capstone. So my thinking was, as far as public badges, I'd go with just the capstone level. But internally, a system might recognize that someone has made the first benchmark, that they've made the next couple of milestones, and then we would be granting these capstone badges that I think employers could be quite interested in. So what I did with my project, my series of challenge assignments, was to start by thinking, what is an employer going to want to know? How can we help employers to be able to understand what somebody has gotten out of their education? For that matter, how can we help individual learners understand what they're getting out of their education? I found the challenge exercises very helpful because of the way they had me frame up personas or archetypes. So I have, several different adult learners with different kinds of mixes of informal and formal education. I have a student who's serving as an intern, an unpaid intern at a magazine. I have a prior learning assessment evaluator, which is something that's a very challenging position, but I think we're going to find this going on a lot more, where colleges are trying to help students evaluate what they have learned prior to coming to a college program or in between different college programs. And then I had to look at accreditors, the internship employer themselves, and a prospective employer who has a job that has no professional certification. This is relevant because when we have a job that has, you want to be a lawyer, you're going to pass the bar exam. You want to be a doctor, you're going to have various kinds of exams that are required for the medical profession. Teachers have, depending on the certification program, the state they're in, various kinds of known certifications. But if what you're looking for is paid professional work, but not in a particular certified profession, then it becomes helpful to know what you can bring to the job. And you might have a degree in something like anthropology, which you might not realize gives you a lot of skills in interviewing and compiling qualitative data and drawing conclusions that could be useful to somebody in all kinds of different professions if you decide that that's where you want to work. So what I was trying to do is get us past, would you like fries with that, to some more specific kinds of credentials that employers might be interested in. Okay.
Terrific, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for sharing that. Wonderful work. Thank you. Next, we'd like to hear from Erica Snyder of the New Tech Network. Erica?
Thanks, Anne. My slide. All right, so my name is Erica Snyder, and I'm a digital learning designer with the New Tech Network. I actually approached this MOOC with the perspective of our organization had already started a badging pilot program. We had not yet fully thought through all of the elements of the ecosystem, which is what this has really helped us with in thinking about our next steps. So the New Tech Network is an organization of 100 schools serving kids in K through 12. We have project-based learning at the core of our methodology, which is really what we're focusing on. The pilot is focused on teachers learning how to implement PBL in their classrooms and what successes they're having. How do we capture personal capacity building in a badging system to encourage high-quality projects being developed and keeping inquiry at the center of where students are focused on and learning within their projects in their classroom. So we started this pilot with 3 schools, which is about 200 teachers. These all happen to be grades 9 through 12. So we have not yet tried with the middle or elementary school teachers. And we have a process for our teachers within the network to become certified New Tech PBL teachers. So that's where we've started with our badging. We have an internal rubric that we use, which has been interesting to try and do this project without having a standards organization out there. We are sort of making up the descriptors according to what our needs are within our network, and our find partners down the road who will also like to engage in some more badging around project-based learning. So far, we've had really positive successes from the people that are in the pilot program. The teachers love this new process. In the past, we had a fairly extensive rubric that needed to be filled out and completed, and evidence-based submissions from teachers needed to be turned in. But the badging program has made it so that the system is here for people to understand. It's much more tangible. They feel like they're having more control over their learning. And in general, the feedback from about 50 to 60 people within the 200 cohort have submitted multiple badges for multiple badges, they feel like they're having a lot of success. And that is really good data for us early on in this program to consider whether we want to move forward. Things that we figure out is the logistics behind a badging program. We have 5,000 teachers in our network at the moment. How do we manage that? How do we roll that out? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And then how far, if we decide to go through with this, how far do we reach? Do we go to all the levels of people in the organization, or do we keep it just with the teachers? Knowing that some of our teachers are actually implementing badges with students, it's been a really interesting dialogue between the network level staff and teachers in our schools that are using badges as well. So it's great conversation, and the MOOC has really helped us think through what our next steps might be as far as going through with building the entire ecosystem out and what it would be to maintain that.
Wonderful, thank you. Next time maybe we'll get to hear about what's happening with your students as well. Thank you so much, Erica. And now let's turn to Sonja Irlbeck from Minnesota Department of Ed.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to tell you about the badge project that I'm investigating. I want to make it clear that I'm not associated with the Minnesota Department of Education. In a nutshell, I've actually recently pulled back from full-time employment with Capella University in the Department of Instructional Design to part-time so that I can investigate some of the new things that are going on in the field of education, specifically the badge system. So the timing of this MOOC was wonderful. I've been a long-time advocate of competency-based learning, and in my field of instructional design, looking at the analysis of different learning challenges, it all has just fit together very well. When I was looking around for an interesting project to take on with this MOOC, the idea of the PSEO, which is Post-Secondary Enrollment Options Program in the state of Minnesota, piqued my interest, and it actually had a personal interest because I recently had a son who went through the PSEO system and was attending college as a high school student, and that was how I became aware of it and some of the disconnects that they actually had. So this is hypothetical. Don't everybody run off to the Minnesota Department of Education and try to track down my name because it won't be there yet. Although hopefully when I get done with this project, there might be some interest in investigating this further. As I envision the PSEO badge system, it currently allows juniors and seniors to earn college credit. They need to prove that they have mastered certain state core competencies, and then the individual higher education institutions set their own admission standards. So if a student was interested in going to the University of Minnesota for a course, or if they were interested in going to community college, they are applying individually to those and showing that they have the qualifications to go to each individual. And to me, that's a real disconnect. Each institution has its own criteria, making it a challenge for a student who may be wanting to go to one or more of those institutions as a PSEO student. And they really lack awareness of which skills, specifically on the part of those high school students, have been achieved so that they have confidence that those students, when they come into the college environment, will be able to handle it. Now, I poked up there where the hand should be, but it's not moving. So, Jarl, maybe you can move it to the next slide for me. Thank you. I based my project on the state English standards just as a concrete example. There are many standards. I chose to go after the English standards that were based on the 2010 core standards to provide the foundations for writing competencies for the 10th graders so that they could prove to the institutions that they had what it would take to be enrolled as a college student. The K-12 standards you can see there address 5 or 6 different large areas, one of which was the writing. And within the writing competency, they had 10 college and career readiness competencies, some writing competencies, and then 17 sub-competencies. And I have been envisioning my project as badges, either they could be 17 badges with the 17 sub-competencies, or those could be rolled up into 10 writing competencies that they would achieve, and then having achieved those digital badges, be able to show to the various institutions that they have the skills that it takes to move on to be a college student as a high school student. Part of my project, and I've been having to muddle this through, and I've had one contact at the Minnesota Department of Education talking about a level of assessment within the state of Minnesota so that things could be equivalent throughout the state of Minnesota in assessing what those skills were and whether they were attained, so that it wouldn't have to become an institution by institution system as it is now. I'd be glad to communicate more about this after the class, or if anybody wants to put something in chat that we could talk about it further. Thank you.
Sonja, thank you so very much. I apologize for having misattributed your affiliation, but maybe very soon I will have actually inadvertently said the right thing after all. You're doing great work. Thank you for sharing it with us.